So today's talk is called Health, Hope, and Harmony, Finding Center in Chaotic Times. And it really feels like a relevant time for this weekend, given the week that we've had. It's been a busy week. And those of you that are sitting farther, please come closer if it maybe feels easier to hear. It's been a busy week with all that's been happening with of course, the US elections, but also with news of abuse in our midst. Very unhealthy, very distorted and disturbing news of unhealthy dynamics lingering in the midst of our community. And I think a lot of people were really thrown off by what they learned was happening. And probably not exclusively in that household, but probably in many iterations and many examples across the nation, perhaps the world. And so it's a big reality to kind of confront at this point, right? But Alhamdulillah, we start with Alhamdulillah because Allah Ta'ala starts His book with Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. This is how He starts the opening chapter of the Quran, the opening, Al-Fatiha. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. And these are things that we need to be able to come back to as realities. We come back to Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal, then we begin to find a semblance of center. When the hal changes, when the states change, we find that we can begin to lose our footing, can lose the handhold, lose the grasp, lose the grip that we once had perhaps. Part of Alhamdulillah, and why you'll find all the books of ilm, the books of Allah Ta'ala, the dua before lectures, we say Alhamdulillah because it centers us back into something. It aligns us back into relationship with Allah Ta'ala, who is Rabbul Alameen. Rabbul Alameen. Alhamdulillah ala kulli hal. With everything going on, Alhamdulillah. We often ask one another, Kayf al-hal? Kayf al-hal? How's the state? And what do we normally answer that with? Alhamdulillah. And it's sufficient at some level, isn't it? But also, there's an insufficiency in that because it doesn't really answer the question. What is the hal? How are you actually doing? And then with that state or from that state, Alhamdulillah. So part of this coming back to our senses piece that we're talking about this weekend is coming back into connection with ourselves, our physical realities, our emotional bodies, our spiritual bodies, our relational bodies, and how do we connect with ourselves in the sense that we can align and center our own experience of life within us, and then really say, Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah, truly, Alhamdulillah, despite everything that I'm in touch with, despite everything that I'm aware of, Alhamdulillah. And we're finding ourselves in prophetic times where it's like every year things get worse and worse, seemingly, isn't it? It's like, subhanAllah, every election cycle is just devolving. The conversation is devolving. The issues, or the lack of issues, the lack of discussion of policy, the total stonewalling and gaslighting of the Palestinian cause. This is jahl, and this is a devolution of our humanity. And it seems like it's just continuing year after year. We're living in prophetic times. These are times that the Prophet ﷺ spoke to us about, reminding us now that are living in the moment that this is all foretold. This is all ma'aruf. This is known. And it's going to be a difficult struggle for you. Despite the privilege, despite the tremendous wealth that we're in, you and I live, us, inshallah ta'ala, middle class people, live in a way that the kings 100 years ago could never have imagined. Running water, automatic sanitation from a button just cleans the bowl, fruits and vegetables and meats from all over the world, capacity to move between spaces in safety from the elements, even in the midst of winter, in the midst of a Chicago polar vortex, you can get to the grocery and back. Ajib. That would kill somebody. That would kill maybe half the city, that polar vortex. We're living in tremendous poverty. But we're also living spiritually in very constricting times, prophetic times, difficult, chaotic times. And the prescription has to come. The prescription for this malady has to come from the Deen itself. It has to come from the Deen Al-Fitra, the Deen of Allah Ta'ala, which is Deen Al-Fitra. Who here is familiar with the concept of Al-Fitra? Al-Fitra. Al-Fitra is an amazing concept. And it is central to our tradition. It is central to our religion. It is central to the timeless teachings of the Prophet ﷺ, in which he tells us, and Allah Ta'ala tells us that you were created perfectly. You were created in a perfect balance and symmetry and harmony and wholeness. Subhanallah. كُلُّ مَوْلُودٍ يُولَدُ عَلَى الْفِطْرَةِ. The Prophet ﷺ says, every child is born in fitra, in principial wholeness, like original wholeness. They're born pure. And the Deen of Allah is entirely oriented to facilitating the management or the maintenance of that wholeness throughout your life as much as possible. That's what the Deen's about. The Deen of Allah is a Deen of light, of healing, of guidance, of protection. Everything is found in the Deen of Allah Ta'ala. It's totally complete. And for us in this time where we're finding issues with our health, despair from our faith, imbalances at every level within and every level without in the collective body, the remedy has to come from the Deen of Allah Ta'ala, Deenul Fitra, which has a tremendously holistic paradigm of attending to all these different dimensions and bringing them back into alignment.